Let's talk about why it feels like Black America has no diasporic allies. White supremacy engineered a global system of racial management designated to create a permanent exploitable class, i.e., Black America. Its masterstroke was the diasporic division stratagem. What is the diasporic division stratagem? It is a deliberate and historical strategy employed by white supremacist systems to foster prejudice, distrust, and social friction between Black America and other members of the African diaspora. This stratagem is designed to prevent global Black solidarity by promoting harmful comparative narratives and weaponizing cultural differences, thereby ensuring that no unified coalition can effectively challenge the existing racial hierarchy. This was done by placating most of the African diaspora with conferred identities, while subjugating Black America to proximate alienation, a state of embedded exclusion meant to perpetuate captivity. This strategy ultimately backfired. By being forced to build the very system that oppressed us, Black America developed an unparalleled understanding of its mechanics, making us the key to eventually dismantling the entire system. Here is how the strategy works. The core of the diasporic division stratagem, or DDS, by granting certain forms of identity, white supremacy created a false sense of power and belonging that redirected energy away from revolutionary change. For example, in Latin America, they were granted a place in a racial caste system while still being oppressed, but this offered a defined hierarchical identity that fostered a sense of structure and belonging within a colonial system. In the Caribbean and in Africa, they were granted nation-state identities, flags, and independence. This created post-colonial nationalist identities, which created a powerful source of pride and a perceived win that focused on building the nation within the colonialized identities and borders rather than challenging the global system that created them altogether. The outcome is that these groups were given a container for their identities, i.e., nation states and caste systems. This placated them as the fight became about managing their own designated space rather than tearing down the entire structure. The other half of this is controlling Black America through proximate alienation. The U.S. model of racial management is uniquely brutal because it's a denial of any form of sovereign identity. Total alienation. Black Americans were given no ethnic designation, no land, no flag, and no nation state. Legally defined as non-citizens within the nation that we were building. Forced proximity. Unlike the colonies, Black people were enslaved and segregated within the dominant society, not on a distant plantation. This created proximate alienation, the state of being physically and culturally close to the center of power while being systemically excluded from it. The goal was to create a permanent, exploitable domestic class that could never coalesce into a threat because it lacked unified bonds of shared, recognized identity or homeland. The permanent slave class was meant to be a predictable, controlled engine of labor. However, this backfired. The strategy to keep Black Americans captive forever failed because it created the conditions for its own analysis. Proximate alienation forced an unparalleled education. We became the forbidden observers. Forced into a front row seat of whiteness, Black Americans became expert analysis of white culture, psychology, and the mechanisms of power. We had to learn it in order to survive. Also, the separate schooling during separate segregation. During segregation, Black-only schools became spaces where Black intellectual class could develop independently. We were taught the master's tools, right? Western curriculum, but from a critical, isolated perspective. learning to adapt and repurpose the information for liberation. This produced a culture of profound innovation, jazz, hip-hop, AAVE, and a tradition of radical critical thinking from Du Bois, Black liberation movements like the Black Panther, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. Because we were denied a past, we were forced to forge a future. So this is how DDS thrives, right? There is a subconscious hierarchy. Everyone subconsciously recognizes the hierarchy of identity, right? Groups with nation-state identities often view their identity as more valid or authentic than the synthetic struggle-forged identity of Black Americans, right? This becomes weaponized division, right? Diasporic tensions build when Caribbeans and Africans view Black Americans as less cultured or the cause of the problem, right? Then they reject the umbrella term for global Blackness, preferring their national identities over our racial solidarity, right? Then turns into the internalized policing, focusing energy on policing who is Black enough instead of unifying against the common system of white supremacy. The ultimate goal, to ensure Black Americans have no allies, keeping the global diasporic divided, weak, and unable to form a legion necessary to challenge global white supremacy. All right. This makes Black America the key to global revolution. Unlike other groups, Black Americans were never bought off with a flag or a nation-state identity. That means that our struggle has never been for a place within the system, but for a total transformation of the system itself. The condition of proximate alienation provides the most clear-eyed, uncompromised, and penetrating critique of the white supremacist system, because our understanding of it was forged inside the belly of the beast. Global liberation requires recognizing DDS as a deliberate strategy and uniting under shared identity, not based on colonial containers, but a shared goal of liberation. It requires the diaspora to listen to the unique understanding born from Black Americans' unparalleled position. Anyways, you guys, please like and share this. I have armed you guys with two powerful coin terms: DDS, diasporic division stratagem, and proximate alienation. If you guys want to learn more about this, please like, share, and subscribe as we dive deeper into these new topics that are going to be key to global liberation.
Black people truly have no allies in this world. I'm an altruistic person at my core, and I truly believe that there can always be a change and a room to educate people. That's why I make the kind of videos that I make. But I just saw this girl go on a 6-minute rant about how a group of Black Americans went to Palestine with her, where they shared with her and the group that they were experiencing racism from the Palestinians, to which she insinuated they should have accepted the behavior, they should have shut up about the behavior instead of playing up oppression Olympics.
Because I was so excited to go on this trip with Black Americans, but during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing oppression Olympics. Some people in the group were too busy victimizing themselves, that the only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about how slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated taker, and talked all this shit about how racist Palestinians are, did not hesitate to pose in front of a ginormous George Floyd mural. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I didn't already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics, this entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community.
Yup.
My grandma used to always tell me, if the story doesn't make sense, then it's definitely a lie. So there's things missing in context in her whole story. But instead of actually listening to Black people, because Black people do not claim racism for no reason. Contrary to what you've all been socialized to believe, if a Black person says that someone is racist, they actually have experienced racism. The anti-Blackness that exists within the Arab community is loud. It's always been loud. This is the same issue we had when this conflict started, where people lack the ability to understand more than one thing can be true, and intersectionality is real. Black people can absolutely stand up for what they believe in and prioritize ourselves first as an oppressed group and still support others. Now, with the history of anti-Blackness within the Arab community, slavery within the Arab community with Black people, the way they treat Black people in the region and domestically in America, rightfully so, a Black person would have preconceived notions about how Arabs treat us, But when that's reinforced by the actual treatment of racism towards us, we're going to say it out loud. Black people are not going to conform and just accept racism. And you're asking people to just accept how they're treated, and they should have been quiet about how they're treated. Come on, let's be fucking for real right now. Two things can be true. And the fact that people don't understand this concept blows my mind. Palestinians can absolutely be occupied, can absolutely live under oppression, and black people can absolutely be one of the most hated groups of people in the world, no matter where we are. Even from oppressed people. Weaponizing a George Floyd mural that black people saw in Palestine, regardless of the fact that if they said that they were experienced racism or not, what are they going to do? They can't disappear. We're in Palestine. Black people experience racism from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, but we still have to live our lives. And you being a non-black person who visibly can blend into white people, you will never understand that concept ever in your life. And you also can't speak on behalf of Afro-Palestinians because you're not them. Lastly, you said if you were anyone else, this would have wavered your support of black people and black issues. That means you're not an ally to begin with. If you don't have the ability to learn and or try to listen and or try to educate those people why what they were doing was an issue for you or maybe your community, then you don't deserve to be around black people. You just don't. I'm sorry.
We don't have any allies. Foundational Black Americans, descendants of American chattel slavery, freedmen, Aboriginal Americans. Whatever name you go by, understand this. We stand alone. This didn't just start in 2025. This has been brewing for a long time, simmering beneath the surface, under the hashtags, under the unity banners, behind the people of color signs. We've been watching. We've been taking notes. And now it's time to speak it plain. They told us we were all in this together. People of color, minorities, non-white solidarity, but time after time, when our backs were against the wall, where were they? Let's go back. A few years ago, Asian students sued Harvard, said affirmative action was hurting them, that we were being given some unfair advantage, that our presence meant their absence. Never mind the numbers, never mind the history, never mind the truth. They blamed us, put a target on us, said the playing field was no longer fair, because we were finally allowed on it. But here's what they didn't see coming. Now they're not getting in either. Student visas are getting denied, embassies tightening up, enrollment falling. Now they're asking what happened. But the truth is, it started when you thought we were the problem. Then there's reparations. Our fight, our demand, our justice. And yet, some of the loudest voices pushing against it, Black immigrants. People who look like us, but don't stand with us. Mona David said it herself. We chose to come here. Reparations aren't for us. That may be true, but what she really meant was, they're not for you. You, the Black American. You, the descendant of the enslaved. You, the one who built this country and never left. Then you had the Latino Trump voters. Loud, proud, waving flags, casting ballots, thinking the policies wouldn't touch them, that the deportations were for somebody else, that they could climb up by pushing others down. And now they're getting deported too. Now they're panicking, saying you're next. But that's the part they never understood. We're not next. We're not in line. We're not part of the immigration system. We've been here. We are not visitors. We are not guests. We are not recent arrivals. We are the soil. We are the sacrifice. We are the seed and the storm. And that's exactly what makes them uncomfortable. Because no matter how close they try to get to whiteness, no matter how many degrees they get, how many flags they wave, how many times they call us lazy or ungrateful, we are still the center of the American story. The ones they imitate, the ones they fear, the ones they hope to erase. So now the question is, were you ever really standing with us? Or were you just hoping we'd stay at the bottom while you climbed over our backs? Because it's giving not allyship, not unity, not justice. It's giving anti-Black American, not anti-racist, not anti-oppression, just anti-us. And that's why we don't have any allies.
Brothers and sisters, today we're going to tackle a very important and sensitive question. Why don't Black people seem to have true diasporic allies? This means, why is it that across the globe, whether we're in Africa, the Caribbean, Europe, or America, Black communities often find themselves standing alone when major crises hit us? This is not about pointing fingers or creating division. Instead, it's about education, history, and understanding. Because if we can figure out why we lack allies, we can also figure out how to build stronger ones. First, let's look at the history. When slavery and colonialism disrupted African societies, millions of people were scattered across the globe, North America, South America, the Caribbean, and beyond. But here's the thing. While other groups that experienced displacement, like Jewish, Irish, or Chinese communities, found ways to hold on to cultural bonds and rebuild international solidarity, Black people were systematically stripped of those connections. Enslaved Africans in the Americas weren't just taken from their homelands, they were also deliberately divided by language, tribe, and culture so they couldn't unite. Colonization did the same thing in Africa, carving up territories and enforcing artificial borders. This fragmentation meant that Black people entered the modern world already disjointed, without a clear sense of shared international identity. Other diasporas, say the Indian diaspora, were able to maintain strong ties with their homeland after independence. But the Black diaspora was denied that chance, because Africa itself was still under colonial control when many of our communities abroad were struggling for freedom. The second factor is global politics. Every group's ability to have allies is shaped by how powerful or resourceful they are seen on the world stage. For example, countries like China or Israel are heavily supported by their diaspora networks because those nations hold strong influence in global affairs. In contrast, Africa, despite being resource-rich, has often been positioned as dependent, unstable, or powerless in the international system. This image, shaped by centuries of exploitation and misrepresentation, makes it harder for the African diaspora to build allies who take our struggles seriously. So when Black people in the US fight police brutality, or when Africans face resource exploitation, or when Caribbeans fight debt and climate crisis, we don't see global solidarity movements rushing to our defense the way other groups do. The world has been conditioned to see Black suffering as normal, as something to be managed rather than solved. Another key reason is our own divisions. The Black diaspora is massive and diverse. African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, Africans on the continent, and Black Europeans. But we don't always view ourselves as one people. Sometimes African Americans feel disconnected from Africa. Sometimes continental Africans stereotype Black Americans. Sometimes Caribbeans feel left out of larger Pan-African conversations. These divides are not natural. They were created and reinforced by colonial powers. But they still affect us today. For instance, when issues of police brutality rise in America, Africans might say that's not our problem. When Africans face coups or foreign intervention, some in the diaspora may look the other way. This lack of mutual recognition weakens us and makes it seem like we don't have allies, even within our own diaspora. Now let's look at other communities. Why do they seem to have allies while we don't? When other marginalized groups face discrimination, they often gain support because they've built bridges with powerful institutions, media, business, politics. For instance, Asian communities often build strong economic networks that give them leverage. Jewish communities have developed political influence and strong ties to their homeland. Latin American groups sometimes benefit from the political power of countries like Mexico or Brazil backing them. Black people, however, face a different challenge. No matter where we go, anti-Blackness exists. It's global. In Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Europe, you name it, anti-Black prejudice follows us. This means even within broader alliances, our concerns are often minimized or ignored. So when people say, why don't Black people have allies? The truth is, many groups sympathize with us in theory, but when it comes to action, their alliances often stop short. But here's the hopeful part. The story doesn't end there. The fact that we don't yet have consistent diasporic allies doesn't mean we can't build them. First, we need stronger Pan-African unity. That means Africans, African Americans, Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos, recognizing that we are connected by history, struggle, and destiny. We don't all have to be the same, but we must see each other as family. Second, we need to invest in building our own power economically, politically, and culturally. When you have power, you attract allies. Other groups won't respect or support us until we can stand firmly on our own feet. Third, we must amplify our voices globally. Whether through media, music, sports, or activism, Black people already influence the world. We need to use that influence strategically to demand solidarity. And finally, we must practice allyship within our own diaspora. If a Black community anywhere in the world is suffering, all of us should care. Because if we don't ally with ourselves, why should anyone else? So to answer the question, why don't Black people have diasporic allies? It's a mix of history, global power structures, internal division, and the unique weight of anti-Blackness worldwide. But the solution lies in us. We can choose to rebuild Pan-African solidarity, to invest in our own strength, and to support each other across borders. If we do that, then not only will we gain allies, we will become our own strongest allies. Brothers and sisters, I want to hear from you. Do you think black people can build stronger diasporic alliances, or is the system too stacked against us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Kindly subscribe, comment, like, and even share this video. See you in my next video.